Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. The project I'm sharing with you today, what I'm calling Nature's Notepad, is something that I did this summer when I was at a craft retreat in Illinois. And a friend and I were just creating with our scraps and such. And I had a pile of dried flowers, dried leaves, dried things, and some scrap transparency and a bunch of scrap notepads. So I started thinking of ways I could combine those pieces into making just some elements to put into a journal. And my friend Lisa was saying, she was making something else. And she said, I should make some of those when I'm done with the project I'm currently working on. And she was making some of these accordion style notebooks. And I thought, oh gosh, I want to make some of those too. I haven't made them in a while. And I have these Tim Holtz strips. A lot of digital artists now have these strips. And I'd had these Tim Holtz strips that I wanted to use on these. And I'd been meaning to do it for a while. And so I was making what she was making, and she was making what I was making. Even though they were very different, they were a similar concept. And then we just started kind of piggybacking off each other. Like she would choose something out of her idea book or Pinterest, and then I would choose something out of one of my idea books or Pinterest, and we were making, and it was a whole lot of fun to get to those things that we'd been meaning to get to, but we hadn't had a chance or hadn't done until then. And so that's what sparked the idea for sharing this, and sharing at the end of the video after we make one of the pieces that we're going to make. I'll go through real quickly some of the things I made while I was gone this summer. And if there's something in there that you would like to see how it's made, you can just say, hey, Corey, show this or whatever. And as soon as I'm able to, I will get in and make a video on that. And so we can kind of like create together. Basically, that's my idea for this. And I'll put these out. I didn't show them very clearly. And all of them have the same idea. Like this one was obviously used in a Project Life type card, and it'll be glued onto my page as a pocket. But there is a transparency on the top. This one happens to be movable, a transparency with some dried flowers. And then there's a notepad. So the pocket will be functional as a place to journal as well. And they were all designed based on what scraps I had and what leaves or flowers or what have you that I wanted to put inside the transparencies. And so this one is a floating pocket, or I can attach it as a regular pocket. And it's got the leaves and the little notepad, and acts as, it can either be a belly band or a pocket or a free floating pocket, as I said. And then it's got a pocket on the top. And they're all done essentially the same way, so they're a little bit different, but they've got a similar concept. This one would be an insert into a pocket. The whole front is a transparency with a scrap of lace, and then the back is the notepad. So you took it in a pocket, you've got the notepad on the back, and then the decorative piece on the front. Same idea with this one. It's just to go into a pocket or on a pocket or make it a pocket or flip it up with the notepad beneath. And I'm trying to stay in frame here. So here's another one of the pocket ones with either a free pocket or a free floating pocket, or an insert. You can paper clip it in or what have you, with just a little notepad on the side. This one, same idea. Absolutely the same idea, though this one would probably be a pocket or a side tuck to put on a longer page and then put a large piece behind it with a notepad on the front, and then the dried flowers, and kind of like a dried flower cluster, I guess, is a way to put that. And I shouldn't even say dried flower. Most of these are weeds. And then this one's just a little bit larger because that's what I had available. And these are just the leftover bits. So when you're using dried flowers, a lot of times the heads will fall off. And that's what happened here. And so I just put it on top of that card. And I've got the little notepad on top. This would be a pocket or a tuck. And I was thinking on this one that I could do it as a flip over the top, so I could attach this little flap to the back of the previous page, and then just flip it up. So there's a place to journal right here, and then you've got your decorative bits as well as a notepad. And then this one, same idea. This one would be a pocket or a side tuck on a page. There's a pocket on the top, and it's got more, well, there we go, it does come out. Okay, pocket on the top with a tag, more of those leftover bits. I had too many just to do this one card. So I made a second one here, and then here's another bit of dried leaves. I had room for both on there. I had just leftover scraps of the transparency, not enough to make one long, but I could make it into two short. And so that's what I did, just to use those up. And again, with a notepad, and this was just offcuts of some coffee dyed tracing paper. So that's the idea that we're going to be making. And all I did was I just pulled out a couple scraps. I had a scrap of transparency, some little bits and pieces, and I'll pull over my scrap bin because I honestly don't know that this is going to have everything that we need. There's a little bit of lace in there, window film or transparency. Different places I have found call this different things, and if you've watched any of my previous videos using these, you will know that they've got, teachers call them transparencies. I'm assuming most teachers do, but that's what I used to use them for when we had the overheads. But they're available readily on Amazon. Some places call it window film. I think almost every place you can, if you pull it, type in transparency, it'll come up. And they come in different thicknesses. Some of them are really thin and some of them are really thick. And again, you can look at previous videos where I've talked in more detail about that. So I grabbed those, and then I've got up here on my desk some just little dried flower bits that are left over, and I'll use one of those things. So this has not been planned out, other than I grabbed some bits and scraps, and I had a scrap of card and a notepad already done, so I just figured, okay, that'll be the size because those fit nicely there. Now, generally what I'll do, as you can see here, I want to make sure that the pieces fit, and this would probably be a nice bookmark type. I'd probably use this as a bookmark insert or something along those lines. And I want, you can put the notepad at the top or the bottom, it's completely up to you, but I'll probably turn it into a bookmark is kind of what I'm thinking. All right, I personally ink because I like ink. If you're not an inker, this is an extra step for you. I generally ink before, and that's a good point. If I'm going to turn this into a bookmark and I want to round the corners, or if I want to square the corners, I should do that first, because once you've sewn the transparency on, you can't get ink underneath it, and unless you make it smaller than the space you're working with. And I think I want these to be rounded corners, so I'll grab a corner rounder, and maybe I'll use this size. Yeah, that looks good. So I'll round the corners of my scrap. This is just a scrap of craft cardstock, any scrap, patterned, solid cardstock, a little bit heavier weight will work great. And so this one I glued on top to make a pocket, and I guess I could do that here. Maybe I'd want to make a pocket. You can tell I did not plan this out with any degree of efficiency. But again, I just kind of wanted to play. And you know what? That might be kind of fun. If I tucked something in there, it would hold the notepad down. You'd take this out. Okay, maybe we'll do that. All right. I'm going to ink the edges first. I've decided that I'm going to put the notepad on top because I like the way that looks. Though if I'm going to make it a bookmark, I need to move it down a smidge to have room for either the string or the lace or ribbon or what have you that I'm going to put on top. So I'll have to remember to do that. While I'm inking, it's been over 2 months since I've made a video. Actually, it's been that long since I've been in my craft room for a huge variety of reasons. I went to visit some friends this summer, towards the end of the summer, after I had my most recent surgery on my leg. And I was gone for quite a bit, and then I got to watch my granddaughter in Idaho, and then I got to visit some friends, and that's the craft retreat I was mentioning, and explored some new areas and places, and then I went to Minnesota to see my newest grandson, Aldrich, get born. So I was gone quite a bit, and then when I did come back, I started at it's not a new to me grade level. I've taught 4th grade before, but it was a new campus, same district, new campus, and I hadn't taught 4th grade in a few years. So, and we had new curriculum, so there was a whole bunch to learn, a new classroom to set up, things to move over, materials to get, curriculum to learn, that kind of thing. And I'm just now to the point where I feel at least like I know what I'm doing with my class. So that's why I'm finally back in my craft room and able to play. And I think I like it like that. And I'm going to glue on the back now. You certainly don't have to. You can glue on that piece later, and maybe it would be smarter to, because I'm going to glue a separate piece on the bottom, kind of like I did here, rather than just making a cluster like this one directly on the page. So, okay, I guess I should back up a minute. If I were going to make a cluster directly on the page, like I did this one, and put the transparency on top, then I would do that before I put my notepad down, simply because it's easier to figure spacing and get the whole thing covered. But because I want to make it into a pocket like I did here, I'm going to work with a loose piece and then just glue it on top afterwards. So depending on which style you're wanting to do might alter how you go about it. But in this case, I've decided I'm going to, can't even see what I've got going on here, sorry. I've decided I'm going to make a loose pocket to put on top because of the way I want to adhere that. And oh, I did it backwards. Well, that's okay too. This works. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room at the top for some lace, and that'll hide the fact that I put this on upside down. I've been reading quite a bit, and my eyes get fuzzy when I read a lot, and so sometimes I don't see things quite as clearly as I should. All right, so that's the first piece, and now it looks like for my cluster, because I'm going to turn it into a pocket, I'm going to need to grab a bit of a scrap, and I've just got this ginormous scrap bin over here that oh gosh, I haven't even looked through it in forever, so I don't even really know what's in there. So because I've got neutrals here, I'm wanting something neutral. That's not quite right. Neutral-ish as my background. This would be a great place to use, so there's too much same color there. This would be a great place or time to use scrap of digital, and I don't like the color of that one with it, or book page. Maybe some book page would be really good here. And I probably should have planned that a little bit better, but you know, sometimes it's just kind of fun to go with and that's too busy. See, if I went with, here's a great example. If I'm going to use this bit of dried flower and this bit of paper, it's just a little too busy. The dried flower gets lost on that paper, so that might not be the best choice for what I'm wanting to do here. But I do well, no, I don't want to alter the cut. I could do that. Oh, that's kind of pretty. I don't care for it so much with this, or do I? That's not bad, right? It's not so bad. What do you guys think? Yeah, okay, I'm going to go with that. I'll grab that scrap and I'll cut it to size to fit the space that I have to work with. Because remember, I want to turn this into a pocket. And this, maybe, do I want this to peek out? Could this be the top of my tag? Sure, why not? That could be the top of my tag, because I do kind of like the way they look together a little bit. So let's play with that. I'll ink it, and I'll glue it on top, and then I'll trim that down and turn it into a tag to go inside the pocket. And the pocket itself will have the transparency and the dried flower on it. And if it turns out horribly, I apologize. And, you know, that's just part of the creative process. Sometimes you love what you make, and other times you're like, what was I thinking? So, and I'm way out of practice. Like I said, I haven't even stepped foot in this craft room for a good solid 2 months. I worked quite a bit yesterday, so I kind of rewarded myself today with the opportunity to play. All right, now I'm going to change that up a little bit, but I'll put that down there to remind myself that I want to use that as the pocket for the tag. Okay, maybe I need to zoom in a little bit more. I haven't been paying attention to the space that I'm working with here, and I should be. All right, so this is going to be my landscape for my pocket, and I'm going to need to cut this down. A lot of times when I make a pocket, I'll leave a little gap like here, but there's no reason on earth I couldn't make this pocket be the width of my workspace, so I think I'll do it that way. And then I'll trim this. If I can see where I marked it. I think this is where I marked it. Okay. I'll save that scrap for something else. And let's make sure I don't put it upside down. And it's obviously too long. So yeah, that's a good width. I like that it's just a little bit wider than this. But it's also too long for this space. So I'll turn it over and mark it here. And I'll trim that off as well. Hope everyone's been doing well. I haven't followed social media at all. I've not been on the internet but a few times. I kind of immersed myself in all things school and classroom and curriculum and such. So I've not heard any updates, but I'm hoping everyone is well and that they're enjoying this absolutely gorgeous fall. All right, so that is going to be the bottom of my pocket. And it's a little close there, but that's okay. It doesn't need to. And I'm going to tuck this in. So yeah, that'll work just fine. And I will ink this. And then once I sew on the transparency on the top of this and then glue the whole thing in place. And I could do it one of two ways. If you're not a sewer, you can sew or glue the whole thing. I could put the transparency and sew the whole thing together, but I believe what I'm going to do, because I don't want to make this any thicker than it already is because of the notepad, I think what I'll do is I'll sew the transparency on here, and then once the whole piece is done, I'll glue down just the edges on top so that I don't have the stitches on the back. So that bookmark piece could be used as a journaling spot as well. I don't often leave a lot of blank pages in my journals to journal, but I always try to put lots of different kinds of writing space so that the writing can be open or hidden depending on personal preference. Same thing with photos. I really like to include photos and memorabilia when I'm making a journal, and I want to leave places for those things. Or, even better, incorporate the memorabilia into the pieces I'm making. All right, so I've inked that, and now I'm going to turn this into a little bit of a cluster. And do I like those two together? Sure. Yeah. Like that. Now, a lot of times with, this is tissue paper, I believe. Not tissue paper. Because I'm on camera, I'm forgetting what it's called. Mulberry paper. That's it. Mulberry paper. And so I'm going to just use a little bit of glue stick for the mulberry paper. And I've got a scrap here. I kind of liked the balance of... But you know what? I don't know that I will, because this is going to go in here and that would go right up there. But you know what? I do kind of like it. And then it's a little long, so let's tear off a bit. I think this was an offcut of something else because it's already partially inked. And I'll do that quite often when I'm actually creating. And that bin has been there a couple months. That's why I'm not really sure what exactly is in it. But I'll just throw it in a big bin and then I'll sort it into my bins on my shelf later on. So that's kind of the in-between shelf. Okay. Is that straight-ish? Sure. And I've got this, I don't even know what it is, a little bit of paper, but it's kind of pretty. And I like the fact that the color contrasts, or I shouldn't say contrasts, it's the same neutral tone, but it's a different shade. And so it adds just maybe a little bit of interest. And let's put that. You know what I don't have here is a Tracy label. How is that even possible? Is that upside down? Well, let's hope not. I'll get a Tracy label before we're done. And I'll put that on there. And I've got just a little bit of a tiny, tiny bit of a scrap lace. I do like that. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine for just a moment to sew that down, simply because I prefer to sew fabric in place rather than glue it generally. So I'll sew that down real quick. All right. And I'm going to put the transparency on the top so you won't really even see the stitches. That's just to hold it in place until I get the rest of it done. So you can see there, I just sewed that little bit of lace, and it doesn't add a lot, but it adds just a tiny bit of shimmer and I don't know, another layer of dimension, I suppose. And then this, let's see, what do I have? I've got a couple bits up here of, oh, that's kind of pretty. Well, that's kind of pretty. That's one I found recently, and I thought was real pretty. and I like the size. All right, so I think I'm going to do that. I was going to do this weed. Like I said, most of them are weeds, but I kind of like the way that looks. But I also kind of like the way this one looks, and that one's a bit smaller. Oh, okay, I like that a lot. I'm going to do that one. This dried weed. It's been on my shelf for a couple days, so I know it's dry. And then this is that tape, the faux vintage tape, where you take regular office tape and put alcohol ink on it. I use walnut and mocha and latte, maybe, something like that most of the time. But it doesn't have to be any specific color. You can mix and match and do what you like. So I do the tape, because I like the faux tape's color, and I also like that it holds it in place while I'm sewing the transparency on. And, I almost don't know, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but I don't know that it even needs a Tracy label, because there's so much interest already. So I'm not even going to put a Tracy label on that. Wow. And then here's the scrap of transparency. I'm just going to lay it on top, and then you can glue it, or you can tape it in place, like with washi tape, glue. I know washi tape isn't designed to hold things in place tightly, but if you put glue on the back of washi, you can do it that way if you're not somebody who's interested in sewing it. But I am going to quickly bring it over here and sew, and I'll put this down here so that you can look at it if you want to while I'm sewing, because it'll just take a moment. I could have moved my sewing machine over there, and I do that a lot, but for this particular one, I just don't think it's necessary. I'm simply using a straight stitch around the edge, and I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, maybe I should have brought it over. Oops. Well, it won't take long, I promise. And I do have my microphone on, so I'm hoping that the volume comes in okay. I had intended a week or so ago, but my voice was really scratchy from being back in the classroom and talking to the kids all day. So that delayed me a bit. All right, so that is sewn, and I'll bring it over here and I'll trim it down. So you can see I just sewed that transparency on top, so that keeps the dried flower safe, because if you just glue a dried flower on top, obviously that'll crumble and fall off. But with the transparency, you get the look of the dried flower, you get the effect of the dried flower, but you don't have to worry about it making a mess in your journals. And I couldn't tell you what these are called. Like I said, I just found them on a walk and thought they were pretty. All right, now I'm going to trim down the extra transparency, and I just flush cut it to the edge of the place. And like this piece is big enough, this piece is big enough. I'll save that for another tiny little one. But the tiny little scraps, I generally don't save those. Though if you've got an idea for a way to use them, I would be more than happy to hear it, because I really like using scraps when possible. All right, so that pocket piece is trimmed, and now I'm going to use the corner rounder to round these two bottom corners. Let's see, did that work? Sometimes with the transparency it takes a second push, or a little bit of a trim. It doesn't cut it necessarily all the way. That probably needs to be sharpened. Okay, that worked. All right, so there is my pocket. I am going to glue the pocket down on here, and I'll just glue, makes it easy with the rounded corners for the bottom. I won't glue along that top because I want to make that into a pocket for the tag, but I'll put some glue. This is art glitter glue, Barely There glue, or not Barely There, Barely Art glue. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on, like I said, it's been a while. All the brands, whatever glue you like, whatever quick dry glue will work just fine. And I would normally clamp this for a little bit, but I put my clamps in the bottom of the bolt. Well, you know what the heck. I've got a little scrap dish up here that I've been meaning to clean out and I haven't done, but this will work. And I'm only doing this simply because it's a little bit thicker, and I want to make sure it stays nice and tight, because I'm going to put a piece inside that pocket. And actually, you know what? Okay, maybe I'll use that for the top. Looks like I've got some bits of lace in here that maybe I can use. got some kind of fun treasures. Maybe I can use those for the top. I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Oh, there's some Tracy labels. I knew I'd have some close by. Oh, and I forgot to get the rest of the, forgot to get the rest of the clamps. All right, so obviously not a very well planned out video, but I've had a couple other ideas that I really want to share, and I'm hoping I can get to. One of the ideas is for an advent calendar, because I absolutely love advent calendars. And I thought maybe I would do an advent calendar that can be made with anything you have on hand, but it's designed to be a gift. So, well, I'll get into that when I make it and share it. But I had an idea. All right, so I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to finish trimming up this because you can see it's already rounded here, and I just want to make this a simple tag. So let's trim it down a bit. That's mostly straight. Yeah, that's good enough for me. And this is an Amazon find. I'll show you here. This is an Amazon find. It's kind of along the lines of the corner rounder, but instead of rounding corners, it cuts off the edges of the corners. Now, it doesn't work for the really big tags because of the angles that it makes, but it's, the name of it is KW M-Trio, T-R-I-O, and it says, I can't even see it, that's so little, something corner punch. But anyway, there it is. Maybe you can see that. I can't see what those numbers say. The gold is on the yellow is hard to read, and it's tiny anyway. Oh, 3-way corner punch. There you go. That's what it says. 3-way corner punch. And it gives you 3 sizes. And in this case, let's try the little itty bitty size. Oh, that's not quite. I don't think that's the little tiny one. I think I'd like it a little bit bigger. So I'll go to the next size up. Yeah, I like that a little bit better for this. All right. See, so that just easily takes the corners off. And of course this will need a little bit of ink, and then I can either put an eyelet or just a punch or just a hole or whatever in here if I want to. And I hadn't thought about that either. So let's see, maybe I have something in that color. Let me grab my bin. Oh, is it in here? One of the things that I do when I have extra paper is I make little circle punches, and it looks like I moved it, so I'm having to find out where I actually put it. Those are the tumults, people, butterflies. Ah, here we go. Okay, here we go. So one of the trays that I use, I put extra circle punches in there so that when I need one, oh, maybe that'll work. There's one right there. It's awfully big. And it's the same color. So maybe a different shade, or maybe not at all. Yeah, it looks like it's the same shade. I guess I could ink that and put it on. You know what? I'm overthinking this. I'll just put a little hole there. It's not that big. We'll just put a little hole there. But that's a great way to use up some of your scraps if you've got some little scraps of cardstock or what have you. All right. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe I can. I'll just fold it in half and punch a hole that way. So again, I'll ink the edge. You can tell I'm being very decisive today. But so if there's something I'd need to know, and I got a couple emails recently that I haven't responded to, so my apologies for that, saying, where are you? We've missed you. And thank you. Thank you for thinking of me. It means quite a bit to me, and I really appreciate it. If there's something you think I should know going on or that you'd like me to know, please feel free to tell me. I don't always respond right away, especially this time of year. I have open house and conferences coming up, but I still love hearing from people. Makes my day. Okay, so there's that. I'll squish it down a minute, and I'll punch a hole in it. Okay, so this is a big risk for me because I almost always mark it because I'm not so great at centering something. And the shadows in this room, they're better than the other craft room, but they're still, yeah, that'll work. Okay, and I just happen to have a piece of string here. I'll tie that in a knot, and there you go. I should have moved it down a bit more, but that's okay. This will work. Okay, tag. And this is probably turning out to be a way longer video because, as usual, I work slow and talk a lot. And Put that in there, and there you go. There is the bottom part of the tag. Now I will use the badge holder punch, which is why I left a little bit of a gap here. And I am going to mark the center on that because that is too much eyeballing for me. And I don't care if it's perfectly centered, but I want it to be mostly centered. So I'll mark that, and let's see if I can see that. There we go. Okay, that works. And then I pulled out this bit of lace from that bin, and I will put this here. And there's a shiny, well, sorry, silk is shiny on both sides, but one is a little bit more shiny than the other. Okay, and then I'll just sew along the top. Do I want a piece of lace on there? Sure, why not? Because I've got it there. All right. I'm just sewing along the top to hold it in place simply because it makes it a little bit less bulky. And this is already plenty bulky. Okay. And there is the tag. And that worked out well because I didn't make any tags with the other samples that I had had from this summer. So there you go. There is another option, another way to make a notepad. What did I call these? Nature's notepad. That's it. So there's another nature's notepad for you. And again, just however you choose to do it, you use a similar formula. Just where you lay it out might be a little bit different. So there is that. And I know I said, you know what, I'll tell you what. If anyone is interested in seeing the stuff that I made and the different things that we played with, just tell me and I'll be happy to do a quick flip through video of these things so you can see. And if not, that's absolutely okay too, because I will start with the Advent soon, very soon. I just have to work out the ideas and make them work the way I want. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your support, your kindness, and I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful fall.